Welcome to the Service to Syndication podcast, where we interview the biggest and most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, capital raisers in the world who have worn the uniform of this great country, those who provide services to our men and women in uniform, and other service-oriented professionals to provide you with the tool sets, the mindsets, and the skill sets to help you conquer your dreams and goals in real estate and to use this wealth creation vehicle so you can live a more successful, happy, and fulfilled life of generosity and prosperity. If what you desire is time, lifestyle, and financial freedom, you've come to the right place. We will bring to you the best real estate entrepreneurs who will give you the insights, the knowledge, experience, skills, so you can go out and crush it in whatever real estate asset class you desire. So grab a pencil and paper, sit back, and enjoy the ride on the Service to Syndication podcast. Hello, my servicemen and women and other service providers. Welcome to another episode of the Service to Syndication Real Estate Podcast, where we interview the most successful real estate entrepreneurs, investors, capital raisers in the world, where most have donned the uniform of this great country. We aim to provide the tool sets, mindsets, skill sets for you to achieve your personal and business goals while using real estate as a wealth creation vehicle to help you live a more successful, happy, and fun-filled life. I'm super excited today because I have Mr. Nelson Zambrano, who is a top-notch real estate investor. But before I properly introduce our exciting guest to you, I just want to ask a favor of you. Please, if you get some value out of today's interview, if you get some type of insight, mindset shift, if you learn a new skill, new information, receive inspiration or motivation to go out and take some action to make some progress in your life, please share this episode with some of your friends. Send it to someone who you know or could be interested in real estate. Share it on your social media, post it on your wall, or share it in your stories. Help us spread our message while you help others. And again, for all of you who shared this episode, I want to say thank you. Again, everybody, I have Mr. Nelson Zambrano. He has named his entrepreneurial project Normandy Group after the historic Normandy invasion in World War II. June 6, 1944. The goals for the new company parallel the goals of the Normandy mission, which was to establish a beachhead for the liberation of Europe. This was accomplished through various allied nations working together as a team, using detailed intelligence and planning with aggressive execution. The goals of the Normandy Group is to acquire profitable multifamily properties in the U.S. based emerging markets using teams of experts who conduct detailed research and analysis to formulate a detailed plan of action and then execute those plans. These are the pillars of Normandy Group. They implement a detailed plan of action after extensive research and analysis to acquire commercial real estate properties. And again, I just want to say thank you, Nelson, for your time today. So, Nelson, the first thing that I do with my guests is that I ask them to walk us through their real estate journey in 75 seconds or less.
Well, Cedric, first of all, thank you very much on that. And it's a pleasure to be here. The audience, from what I understand, is folks that are civil servants, and that could be active duty, retired, reservist, which are double the citizen, as one of my old commanders used to say. So I'll tell you quickly, my real estate journey in 75 seconds or less. So, it really, quite frankly, begins with my dad. My dad, he always wanted to invest more in real estate, and my parents were immigrants. And I remember in Brooklyn, he would always look out and see these buildings and say, I wish I could own a building. And because he understood the power of leverage. He was is a very hardworking guy. And he didn't quite take advantage let's just say of certain opportunities that came his way. But he understood, did well for himself. But that to me is what kind of got me started there. I was a Army reservist, so I had dual career, right? So why was I in the reserves? Because I enjoyed the work and I enjoyed, like, in case something happened, they'd call me. But I also like getting that extra paycheck too. That was always nice, right? That always, and it gave me options. If I didn't like my something in the civilian world, I could always say, well, I'll do a tour on active duty or something. So that was always good for me. The and for me, it started with actually 9/11. And I might go over to 75 seconds, but right around that time, I bought a single family house, which, going back in time now, I would reverse it. I'd buy a triplex, fourplex, duplex. And then I was getting ready. The 9/11 happened. By a fluke of nature, I was not at the World Trade Center. I'm supposed to be there. I just was lucky that I was not there. And I bought a triplex at the same time. Boom, I got recalled to active duty. So that was my kind of my second investment property. The first was the house. I deployed, came back, bought another property, then which I would not do again. But then I bought a fourplex, and that really helped catapult me. Why? Because I was able to started JV with the City of Fort Lauderdale joint venture, and they put real resources and money in. And that really was another big learning curve right there. And then I bought some other properties, deployments, and then I discovered short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, and that led me here to Puerto Rico. So that's kind of it in a big nutshell right there.
Okay. All right, got it. So let's talk about those first few. Well, first, before we get there, what first got you into real estate? Like, what was that impetus that said, hey, let me buy a property? Was it just that fact that your dad always wanted to own something other than maybe where you guys were living, or it was just like, what was it that sparked that interest into real estate?
Yeah, so that was the first thing, like seeing him, and then I saw the power of leverage, right? So for me, the fact that I could get someone else to pay a mortgage and there'd be enough left over, let's say, to pay my electric bill, that was a fantastic thing. And then the fact that property could pay for, let's say, I bought this SUV, which saved my life, and I never made a payment out of my own pocket. It was the property that paid it all. That to me was like amazing. That the property paid for everything, and I walked out with this, nice SUV. That was like amazing. So that was my impetus, really. That was my impetus.
Okay, all right. So it's funny that you even mentioned that, because there's another real estate professional, I'll call it, that I follow, and his whole thing is every time that he wants to purchase something, right? He goes out, buys real estate. He buys some form of asset that pays for that specific liability. And that's so funny that you even mentioned that. And I really and truly believe in that as well. Or at least I tried to do it along those same lines. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, like right now, this is like the sports car I really want, but I haven't gotten the properties to do what they're supposed to do just yet. So I'm not buying it, and there's some things I want to do, but I've got to get the investment to pay for it. It can't be me. It's got to be the investment to pay for it. So until that happens, I'm driving my Kia. That's what it comes down to. I'm driving a Kia.
I love it, man. I love it. Hey, look, as long as it has a motor and it'll run and got four wheels, hey, who cares what you drive, So now let's talk about those first few properties. One, where were they? And what kind of purchase price and things like that were we looking at?
They were all in South Florida because that was close by. Now there was some luck involved. Why do I say luck? Because I lived in South Florida. Okay. It's a magnet for people. It gets cold. It's no state taxes. So, there's a certain amount of luck, right? I could say, oh, I'm so smart. But no, there was a certain amount of luck involved, right? Because I didn't have to travel. Like in some cases, I bought a property that was one house down from me. Like it was one house down. And, I'm not a wealthy guy, but it's a nice neighborhood. So to be able to have somebody from out of state sell or finance it, no money down, I didn't have to put no money into it, and it's one of the top 3 neighborhoods in Hollywood in South Florida. There's now there's work because I had to learn, okay, how do you do this seller financing thing? I'm in the book, I'm talking to my mentors back and forth, I'm biting my nails. But at the end of the day, I was walking on the street. That's what it comes down to. And I was paying attention to my surroundings. So that was one. Then the other one was a rough neighborhood. And somebody said, hey, look, went to talk to the City of Fort Lauderdale. Now, again, we talked about this offline. It was the 2008 timeframe right afterwards. So, and I spoke to the City of Fort Lauderdale, and they said, and this is, again, government folks. Remember, government folks, Uncle Sam only spends money in a named program, right? We should all know this, right? It's got to be a named program. So if you're a veteran, you could be in a gunfight, whatever ID. If it didn't have a name, it didn't happen. So it might have been Hill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-digit grid or 10-digit. And if it had, then it happened there. You can put your paperwork in through the VA. So the same way in reverse too. So I'll talk. I mean, is it okay if I talk about that?
How that happened? Go ahead. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So basically, it was I was trying to buy a series of fourplexes, and I wanted to. This is my date me. There was a TV show which I never really saw, but I love the name of it, Melrose Place. And I said maybe I could make it like this Melrose Place kind of place. And this is before maybe Airbnb was starting, or no, it was right before that. But I just had this vision of it. And I said, well, how do I close on this thing? How do I close on a couple? So one, I had no clue on how to close on all of them at the same time, but I could close on one. So I closed on that one. And then someone said, my agent, and I'll mention her name, Sandra Ford. She said, Nelson, I heard something about the City of Fort Lauderdale. So I was in between deployments, and I went to the City of Fort Lauderdale. I said, hey, do you guys have anything available, any funds for multifamily residential? And they said, no, we ain't got nothing. So I said, they said, we don't have funds for that. And something told me funds for that. And I said, well, what do you need to do to have funds? And this applies to any city, right? Economic development. And they said, well, basically it's got to be a named program. And I'm like, just like the military. Of course, it's the government. So I said, well, what do we have to do? He says, well, we got to give it a name. So on the spot, we gave it a name on the spot before I left. And guess what? The guy said, okay, fill out this application. And that's how we got. Then 8 months later, I went before a board. It was really tough because, I mean, I treated it like a military briefing where you got to know all your stuff and you're going to be asked all these questions. And I'm glad that I did because I was a nobody. However, there were some people on the board who said, we've given money to these big groups and big guys. And they pointed actually to the skyline in Fort Lauderdale. And they said, and a lot of those folks are in jail now for misusing Uncle Sam's money. Right? Because you misuse the money, it goes straight to the Department of Justice, and from there straight to FBI. There is no stop at sea and talk to the sheriff. No, it's straight to federal, and you're gonna lose, right? Because they have unlimited resources. I mean, they're basically a spy agency with law enforcement capacity. You're losing. And so I was there. Some of the board members were pretty heavy-duty investors, but they had always seen me show up at these properties at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And so they stood up for me. I made a full military briefing, like a PowerPoint, and they had a screen, and I would do this, I would do this. Bottom line is they said, we will fund the external rehab cost. We'll fund it. And then they, like I said, it was a tough briefing. And they had already said yes, but I really didn't pick up on it. And then they said, is there anything else that you want? And I was kind of a little bit of a smart aleck. And I said, sure, I'd like to have a new parking lot and my own cops. So guess what? They said yes to that too. And a week later, I had a new parking lot. And then I remember I deployed, and then I got this frantic phone call from my construction guys, the rehab team, really. And they were like, Mr. Zambrano, Mrs. Zambrano, the cops are arresting us. I'm like, what do you mean? So they being motivated dudes, right? They showed up at 7 in the morning, and so did the cops, because they said, get your own car. So they came in horses, and like they put them in the back of the police car, and they're like, no, we're working for, and they call me, and I'm like overseas. I'm like, yeah, they work for me. They work for me. But that was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. So they gave me a parking lot. I didn't have to worry about people stealing my stuff because the cops were showing up at all kinds of times. My guys were on top of it because they're like, man, this guy, he's got some pull, some juice. So that worked out well. Long story short, the guy across the street from me, he did not have that. His partner stole $250,000 from him. And how do I know that? Because my guys were actually taking bets because they could figure out, they did the math on like, hey, he's getting a lot more materials than what he needs. So they actually showed me their bets. And then I met the owner, and he said, yeah, he stole $250,000 from me. He would order extra stuff. So what is that? So what's the purpose behind that? One is always partner up. Even Uncle Sam can be your quote unquote partner, JV partner, that's available. Longer timeline, got to learn how Uncle Sam works. And that was one of my deals. And the meeting was so difficult, I even told him, I said, look, I want you to have your next board meeting at the property.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, because, so did they show up? No, but the head guy showed up. He came by, and I just happened to be there. So I toured him around, and they wrote me a very nice letter. He said, look, anytime in the future you want to do this, we're here for you.
Okay.
So that was a very nice thing.
So this property that we're discussing, I think you said it was like a 4-unit. Was it just in shambles or something like that made you decide to go to the city, or I'm thinking Fort Lauderdale. They're not going to let too many shambled houses, be in their neighborhood. At least that's what I'm thinking.
Well, just like anywhere, there's like the bad side of town and the good side of town. Then there's like the rough side of town. So the bad side of town, there was a developer, is a developer, very good guy, great dude. His name is Rene Lapine. And he's done some amazing things there. So I was like on the periphery of what his project was. I was in the periphery of it. And he's got like this manifest destiny way of doing things, which is really good. And I was in the edge of that. So he just also happened to be on the board. And there was a lady, I don't know who this lady was. She was like an angel from heaven, because she also stood up and said, give this guy a chance.
Okay.
So there was that series, total of 12 units. I could only grab one. I did not know how to grab the other 3. So again, this goes back to podcast, real estate education. Because if I would have known, I would have somehow wrapped them up, but I just didn't know at the time.
Okay. Got it. So during this time, my assumption, and please correct me if I'm wrong, you're working, you're in the military doing deployments back and forth, because this is right after 9/11.
By the way, these are like real deployments. This isn't this, I'm going to Qatar or Dubai. Not that it's BS, but these are like, body armor, kind of deployments. These are like, this is when we were fighting everyone.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Well, let's even discuss that a little bit. One, tell everybody, what service you were in, your rank, your MOS, all of that.
Yeah. So at the time I was this tells you how long these things go for, right? I went from a captain to colonel. Right. Now, in between there were breaks, but still, it didn't seem like to me that there were breaks. And quite frankly, I always said to myself, why did I stay in the reserves? One, like I said, I thought it was a pretty good deal, and I love the network. Network is a huge thing. The people, of course, there's people that I could choke if if they gave me, if I knew I could get away with it. But I would say to myself, when I'm old and gray, like 9/11, I said, what am I going to tell my grandkids?
Mhm.
And legacy was still is a big thing for me. That I was just pissed off and, America, America, America. But what'd you do, Grandpa? Well, I ain't do nothing. No, 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 no. That wasn't going to be my story. So I wanted to make sure that I was getting involved in as many things where I could make a real difference as possible. And even one time, some the time I was a very junior officer, and some major said, you need some psychological help. And I was like, really? Well, you better tell that to everybody in Third Special Forces Group, because that's how everybody's rolling over there, you know. And not to mention those dudes in a range battalion. So, but I'm like, well then, but it was one of those things where, to me, that was very, very, very important to be a part of.
Okay.
To be a part of. So, and part of my deployments went to Colombia, South America, somewhere to the Middle East, and but yeah. So that was a good. That was a good. Hmm.
Okay. All right. So, for my listeners, tell them what markets are you currently purchasing in?
Yeah, I'm only in one market. I'm in Puerto Rico. So I came to Puerto Rico to look at souvenir shops, and as part of the due diligence process, I said, "Wow, the short-term rental market here is amazing. Boutique hotels are amazing." And I describe Puerto Rico as being the Monaco of the U.S., just like you hear Monaco, Europe, where the wealthy go to kind of hang out. Well, to me, Puerto Rico is the same, except you won't see wealth here in Puerto Rico like in Miami, like the Lambo. You ain't gonna see that. But what you do see is, remember, in the US, we call corporations people, which is crazy because the corporation has a lot more juice than any one person. And who do you see here? What's the top industry in Puerto Rico? It's not tourism. It's actually pharmaceuticals. Pharmaceuticals. So, um, and they're in the Fortune 500. They make up the S&P 500. Pfizer, Amgen, Johnson & Johnson, Bristol Myers. I mean, any Tylenol that you consume in the United States is made in Puerto Rico, tax free. So yeah. So one, two, IT companies. A lot of IT companies have headquarters here. Number three, investment firms, crypto firms, all kinds of investment firms. Guess what? They don't pay taxes either. Tourism is way down on the list as number four. Way down. It's not number one. So Puerto Rico has incentives for creating housing, vacation rentals for tourists. They're incredible incentives. So I am in the Puerto Rico market. And if
Okay.
anyone has an interest, please, reach out. Happy to talk to you. Doing all kinds of things here. But I digress.
Um, so, okay. Well, what made you decide to? Because you were in Hollywood, Florida, or I'm sorry, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. What exactly prompted you to divert your way or move to Puerto Rico? Beautiful island, by the way. I've been there once, but it's a jump from the mainland.
Yeah, and it is. So, all right. So what made me? I was looking at the souvenir shops, right? And then you do the due diligence, like the tourist seasons. And then as part of that, it's very similar to like the big macro when you're looking at a short-term rental market. The first thing about Puerto Rico is it has an extra tourist season that very few places, if any, that I know have. For example, in the summertime, it's in a warm place. Who wants to go to South Florida when it's warm in the summertime? No one, except if you're forced to go to Disney to take your kids, right? So nobody wants to do that except in Puerto Rico. That low season isn't really that low. Why? Because you have the New Yorkers, Chicago Ricans, California Ricans want to come back and visit their families, and they
Mhm.
come with the kids. So no school means it's available, and they come back, they stay with the family. Excuse me, they visit the family, but they stay at an Airbnb, and they get to enjoy Puerto Rico. So that's a huge, huge, huge thing. So there's an extra little tourist season. Second thing is the price per door prices. Acquisition price is a lot less that I found to be than in Fort Lauderdale. So I buy more property for less money. All right. I buy a lot more property for less money. Other thing is the construction here is built to last. I guess Puerto Rico must have been planning for some kind of invasion because they don't know what drywall is. It's cement, and guess what? Then some more cement. So that's it. They don't do that like flimsy, drywall. So that's a good thing too. Another thing is my operating expenses are a lot less. So, for example, taxes here are a lot less. The property, and depending if you're California, Chicago, New York, this may not seem like much, but an $10,000 a year property tax in Florida here, that equivalent property is $1,500 in property tax. So that's huge. That's almost like a 75, 85% discount. My average daily rate here is the same. Actually, it's higher in Puerto Rico than it is in South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another big plus. So you have all those pluses thrown in there. Add on top of that, you have the incentives thrown in by the government. So, for example, you have the tax credits, which basically mean as long as you're doing a certain type of vacation rental, it cannot be just a regular old Airbnb. There's a way to kind of sneak in the way. But if it gets above a certain number of units, you can get back 40% of the total investment to include operating expenses. So, for example, it's a $500,000 property, right? And then you put, let's say, a rehab of another $500,000 in. And then you throw in salaries. You throw in, right, because you got to have management and all that. You throw in expenses, operating expenses. It might be from the toilet paper, towels, soap, all of these things. You throw that in. You can get back 40% of that in the form of a tax credit. And now, what the heck does that tax credit mean? That you don't pay taxes? Well, right off the bat, you're not going to pay taxes, and I'll go into that. So what they do is that 40%, and you can go 30% too, but the 40%, they want to make sure that you're going to stick around. So they'll divide that 40% by 3 over 3 years, or 4 years, over 3 years. But basically, so in that case, let's say it's 40%, just to make the math simple, of $1 million. So they'll give you a check divided up over 3 years of $400,000. And then you can take that and you can sell it to who? A bank, some institution that pays a lot of taxes. So you can go to, let's say, Bank of America or Bank XYZ and say, hey, do you owe some money in taxes? Which, of course, the answer is yes. And then you can sell it to them. There's intermediaries here, firms that specialize in this. And you can sell it to them for anywhere from 85 to 90 cents on the dollar. So let's say it's 90 cents on the dollar. So they get a $40,000 tax break. We would get $360,000 tax-free. On top of the fact that the investment itself is already earning a double-digit return. So we're giving access to some of the tools I call resources of what people always hear about. Five. Did I lose you? I lost you, huh?
All right, you're back. You're back.
I'm back. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, but I can't say again?
Yes, I can hear you.
I can't hear you though. So let me hold on.
Okay.
What's going on? It might be something on my end. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you loud and clear now. Much better. Thank you. All right. And how's this?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So like I was saying, so you have access to those tools as well. We have access to those tools as well. But the investment already by itself, without the 40%, it's already good. It's already good. And then there's other tax incentives thrown in there as well.
Wow. You know, you and I, we had talked prior to today. And then again, we talked a little bit before we started. Wow. I mean, this right here, this nugget in terms of this tax credit, man, I think raising up today, and I'm telling the wife, like, we're moving to Puerto Rico. There's huge incentives to be down there now. And I tell you, like I said, I've mentioned to you, I think before, that I know at least 2 other people that have moved to Puerto Rico, and they had mentioned on a high level the taxes and, the tax breaks and everything that they get for being down there and doing business. But man, you're really laying it into what exactly is going on down there in that market. And I'm quite certain after this, there's going to be a huge influx of new investors moving to Puerto Rico.
Well, reach out. So that's a good point. So the best thing to do, what I tell people, because and I've met some sophisticated folks, accredited investors, and they'll even they will not know about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll meet with them and we'll talk, and they'll say, oh, this and that. I'm thinking, and then I gotta like break it up. Like in the military, just talk to me like I'm a private, right? Or talk to me like I'm a second lieutenant that don't know nothing. And you say, look, I'd recommend you don't make any more decisions or movements until you explore this. And they'll look at me like, I didn't know that. Or I didn't know, do you have any information on that? And then I'll send them some info, and they'll be like, I did not know that at all, Nelson. I did not know that at all. And it's tough. They're like, wait a minute, I'm doing this, and how did I not know this? So, and it's because Puerto Rico has that unique relationship with the United States. It is part of the United States. Puerto Ricans are Americans, okay? But they have a unique relationship that no other state has. No other state has.
Okay. So primarily the assets that you're buying there in Puerto Rico, they are all pretty much Airbnb?
That would be my second option. Okay. With Airbnb. My first option, let me tell you what would be the ideal, is to buy something that I can make into at least 9 units, really 7, but really ideally 9 units and up to about 25, because that's kind of like where my wheelhouse is. Maybe you can go even bigger, because to get the max incentives, they don't want it to be an Airbnb. They want it to be bigger than that.
Okay.
They want it to be bigger than that. But ideally, it would be like what some people might call a boutique hotel, and that's really a fancy word for an Airbnb on steroids. But that's what that is.
Okay. So how are you finding the deals that you're going out to look at and things like that?
Yeah, so Puerto Rico is not like the US where people just go on Zillow, and it's a different animal, right? So when somebody says they found something, they really found something, because there isn't all that technology that people are so used to. Like they just go on Zillow and this and that. That exists, but not as much like in the US. So here, it really comes down to a personal relationship. Like I meet someone, like you can meet someone at motor vehicle, and they say, I'm tired of this property. So I'm always listening. I'm literally always listening. And, if there's 2 girls talking and they're looking at their phone and they're talking about a sunset, I'm jumping into that conversation, because they might be talking about some property that they really like. And the boyfriend, they got to sell, the husband, they got to sell it. So I'm like jumping in. So that's one way to do it. The old school, which is you drive and you see something and you knock on a door. And someone might say, yeah, I'm ready to move to the country or something. So that's how it's done. And then what will happen is you'll get introduced to other people. They'll say, I got these 4 other houses on the block, or I inherited this headache. Next thing you know, the guy's talking about half the block. And it'll be some unassuming dude in like beat up flip-flops, and he's like, or she, or they've had it about to hear. So now there's agents and so forth. But that would be one way.
Hey,
Thank you for tuning in to the Service to Syndication podcast. If you are a military service man or woman, government employee, or any other service-related professional, this is for you. I once was where you are. As a service member, I lived paycheck to paycheck. As a government employee, I knew there was more out there for me. I tried all the get-rich-quick schemes. None of them worked. Then a friend of mine introduced me to real estate investing. I am a commercial multifamily syndicator who helps those who have served in the military and those who provide services to our men and women in uniform and other service-oriented professionals achieve their time, lifestyle, and financial freedom by investing passively into multifamily real estate. If you know that this life has more in store for you, I invite you to tune into the Service to Syndication podcast to learn the tools, tricks, and concepts to help you achieve the time, lifestyle, and financial freedom that comes with investing in real estate. So go over to cobbscreekcapital.us. That is COBBSCREEKCAPITAL.US and schedule a call so that we can get to know one another and see how we can work together to help you achieve your goals.
The other way is to network with professionals.
Yeah.
But the initial way would be that.
Okay. So the assets that you're picking up and things like that, how will they be managed for you down there? Are you going to do it yourself, or you've made relationships with property management companies down there to be able to manage those assets for you?
Well, it's one of those, all of the above, right? So you have the relationships with property management firms, but starting up our own property management, asset management firm, really.
Okay.
Because the whole idea, and I don't know if you've heard Bill Ham, really good guy. He's got this, I call it, it's not a theory because it's actually something that's done, the conveyor belt, where just like whether it's Ford or Ferrari or Lamborghini or my favorite Maserati, whatever car vehicle, it's a conveyor belt. So they start at the beginning of the conveyor belt and they've got a chassis. And then as the car goes along, you add in 4 tires, you put an engine, and then you put these doors on it. And at the end, you got this car that drives off the parking lot and they sell it. So the same thing works with the property. So to me, it's a property management firm, whether ours or external. Asset management is the one we get it under contract, we close on it, but then we have to manage it so we can get it off the lot, so to speak. So that's how I'm looking at it. It's a conveyor belt.
Okay, got it. Now, those first few properties that you had there in Fort Lauderdale, were they self-managed or property management?
Okay, I have lost hair because of genetics. I don't want to lose hair because of these other kinds of problems. I have, it's a property management, but we treat it like an asset manager, an asset management firm. So it's a third party, but in all reality, it's like we're like this. As a matter of fact, like I mentioned, they're doing a special task for me right now. We have a Monday morning meeting, 8:00 Mondays. We have a certain agenda. No matter where I'm at in the world, we meet, Zoom, whatever it is, and we talk about occupancy. We talk about ADRs. We talk about any issues that are happening, reviews, expenses. So I treat it like an asset management firm, and they tell me, no, your properties are the best. Why? Because you keep an eye on stuff. You keep an eye on stuff.
Yeah.
And then we're always talking about, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that?
Okay. All right. Got it. So let's talk about those properties. What value, like when you purchase these assets, what value adds did you provide for those properties? What did you do to bring them up, or if anything?
Well, one was I experimented. So how do I get into like short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, right? So one was a very good friend of mine. And again, I go back into networking, personal development. And her name is Renata Tapia. Renata Tapia, you can Google her. Great, fantastic. I don't know if she's taking any more clients. But, she came to the house and she kept on like smiling, looking at these 2 bedrooms that I had. And I'm thinking, so what's going on? And she goes, Nelson, I can help you make X amount. And I was like, are you serious? That would be the whole house. She goes, no, those 2 bedrooms. To get out of here. Long story short, 90 days later, we were like $400 short of that, hitting that number. And I was just like amazed, right? I really was amazed. So that got me started into the short-term rental. Then COVID hit, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Then I started thinking the military, right? Who's essential? Nurses are essential. Boom. So and I'll shout out to Furnish Finder. I interviewed some of their folks on my podcast, and I got into this midterm rental business, which is basically housing. And it made me feel good, military contributing to the cause of nurses. And all the nurses want is blackout windows, because at nighttime they want to, daytime they want to sleep. They're like vampires. They got to sleep. And at nighttime they go off to work to, fight whatever diseases are in the world. And then they don't make any noise because they're asleep or they're working out. So that got me into the midterm rental, and I learned a lot about that. And then kind of COVID died away, and I jumped back into the next property, which was a duplex. And then I had a very good avatar of what I wanted. I wanted not luxury, because luxury you can go crazy.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't want the low end because I don't want to deal with that. But I wanted, and this is a term that I came up with, and now even some guys in Puerto Rico that tell me, Nelson, this is your term. We got to give you credit, which is premium economy. Like what's premium economy? If you fly long, right? If you fly, but I mean long, I mean like from, let's say, New York to Argentina, or New York or Miami to Argentina. That's a long flight, 7-8 hours on that flight. So you've got business class, you've got, and business and first class are not always the same, but sometimes they kind of collapse them. Those are very nice. Then you got economy. Well, on those flights, at least in America, you got this one little sliver, which if you get a meal, right? You get a full meal. The seat isn't as nice and as big as business, but it's a heck of a lot more better than economy. You have your own bathroom, and it's a really nice, and you have a lot of privacy. So if you're a person, let's say you can't get into business and they bump you back, you say to yourself, wow, this is a pretty good deal. It's not like up there, but it's a pretty good deal. I could get used to this. It's not bad at all, right? And then if you're an economy and you decide to splurge and you jump into premium economy, you say to yourself, this is a really good deal. It's much better than economy. I feel like I'm upgrading my life. So they got that. And when I would travel, I'd always be in that one little section, living large. I'd go up there to see, because I could chill in business. And then I'd go back to my seat, had the same meal, had the same everything. And we had our own bathroom too. So, and then you go to economy, like, yeah, I ain't hanging out with y'all. I'm sorry. So I said to myself, that's where I want to be. I want to be premium economy. So everybody like appreciates you. And if I'm in economy, man, you know what's going on there, man. And if you're in business, that sky's the limit, Oh my goodness, then I'm rubbing my big toe, So for premium economy, everybody's like happy.
I plan on getting on a plane in December, and I won't look at it the same anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
gosh.
Yeah.
But no,
it's nice.
Yeah, no, I get exactly where you're coming from. You're right there in the middle. You're upgrading your assets to right there in the middle between, just the basics that you need to put inside of a property. and that luxury style. So I totally get that. Yeah, that's pretty good. And I like that premium economy. I like it. I like it a lot. Sounds great. Um, now, in regards to that, the rehab and everything like that, have any of your properties ever went over budget?
Well, that first one, that track, we didn't have a budget, so automatically went over budget. I had no clue what the heck I was doing. I had no clue whatsoever. All I saw was a check. There's money left at the end of every month, and that paid the electricity bill, and it paid an SUV. So there was no budget. There was no nothing there. Okay, there was no nothing. For the properties, I like the least amount of work to be done to them. Now I'm moving like heavy more stuff. But those initial ones were really because I didn't have too much of a background there.
Mhm.
So I wanted the least amount of stuff to be done. Okay. And I would like negotiate in the purchase. Just leave everything there. Why? That means that I gotta buy it. And it would last me long enough until bless you, until whatever I need to get something. Because if a person doesn't have that background, like rehab and all that can get scary.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, when it comes to that, you also want to make sure that you have a good GC, especially if you don't know much about rehab and, what it takes to be done, that you have a trustworthy GC, someone who's, they're going to look out for you. They're not looking out for themselves and trying to rake you over the coals in terms of adding other stuff, that you don't need and other costs and things like that. So I get it. I get it 100%.
And so talking about this, so even like if a person has to, again, it depends on what stage, right? Like sometimes a really good handyman just might do the job. It doesn't have to be a GC.
Yeah.
Because a GC by default is going to jack up the price. And just because a person's a GC doesn't mean that they actually know what they're doing. So you might be better off just getting 2 or 3 really good, solid handymen, asking, hey, how would you do this? How would you do this? Value their time, respect their time, take care of them financially, or when you go to the job site, bring them water, bring them sandwiches, get references, referrals. Because in that one property, the 2 guys who did most of the work that really knew were these 2 dudes who spoke very little English from Puerto Rico, and they would stay at the property with me. I mean, and their work is still like standing hard, standing strong, because they actually knew. I mean, they were like almost like artisans, really. So I would tell them, don't just fall for the, well, I'm a GC. Just, sometimes a really good handyman just might do the job.
Yeah, definitely. We call them Huck with a truck. Sometimes those guys are just the best ones, and definitely good on the pocketbook as well, So yeah, definitely. Yeah. Let's talk about your team in terms of taking down these properties. Like, what type of financing did you have? Did you capital raise to be able to purchase them, or you were in the back pocket Bank of USA?
There's so many ways to be able to finance properties, and again, I'm talking to more like the newer folks.
Yes.
And then the folks that are thinking about, hey, should I get into a short-term rental? So the first thing is well, it's like in the military, we have a fallback position, right? You got a primary, right? You fight from the primary. Then you've got what's it called? Alternate position, which is almost as good, not as good, but and then you have a gotta forget now the term, not tertiary, but there's like the final position that you go to. And I think when doing the underwriting, the analysis, they have to look at it the same way. Like, what's the most that I can make? Well, that's probably a short-term rental, right? Then what's the second, my fallback position? Well, that would be a mid-term rental. And then can that still pay the mortgage? Can that still take care of my expenses? Can I go over break even? Can it take care of me at break even? And then the last one is long-term rental. Right? So that should be like, because you can't always count on short-term rental. Until COVID hits, then you're in mid-term rental range. Oh my goodness, then long-term rental. So you should always be looking at, so there's no surprises. So there should be no surprises there. So that's the first thing as far as taking a property. And then you have a multitude of loan options. The one that I really liked a lot was the FHA 203K loan.
Yeah.
That I did for the fourplex. I did that one. For the veterans, you've got your VA loan, which you can use, right? You have a residency requirement, but you can check that block fairly easily, right? And bam, you're up and running. So you have some really good options. If I was going to start all over again, I'd buy the triplex, the fourplex first, then a single family home, or maybe a triplex, fourplex, get another one, then the single family home towards the end. So that's what I would be looking at doing. I'd be looking at doing it that way.
Okay. All right. So tell our audience a little bit about the Normandy Group.
Well, Normandy Group, it's, for me, like I said, I'm military. I'm a big fan of military history because history repeats itself. And you got to have detailed planning. Then you got to have incredible execution. So execution means anything from building up the team, which is what I'm doing here in Puerto Rico. The relationships with the banks, setting up different real estate meetup groups, meeting people with specialized skill, making contacts with the local government, CRIM, which is like the Property Tax Appraiser's Office, which in Puerto Rico has a lot of power, so that they get to know who you are. Zoning as well. Remember, everything is tourism. So, hey, how many units can I put here? Hey, I got to meet a company that specializes in putting on a second floor. That's amazing. A company that specializes in second floors. Everything is built concrete here. So a lot of places you can put a second floor on it. Second floor, 2 units, bam, you got 3 units. So that's amazing. So it's building up that whole team. And then there's the marketing effort. I have a podcast. It's called Investing in America. We're launching a YouTube channel as well. So there's that kicking off. And then the capital raising efforts, which, because of my background, I like to focus on folks from overseas, but then local folks too. There's local folks here from Puerto Rico that they're saying, hey, what do I do with my money? What do I do with it? So that's something. So hopefully that answered that question.
Yes, 100%. All right, so let's focus on the military real quick. Do you still keep in touch with some of your comrades that you were in conflicts with?
Yes. And I emphasize this to folks, is that for the folks that are in the military, or I don't like it, I had an E6 who was an asshole, but do not let that mess with you. Why? Well, we were talking about this last week, and I went to Arlington National Cemetery. A good buddy passed away. By default, whether you're enlisted or officer, you're already part of a very elite group. It is easier to get into Harvard than it is to join the military. People say, well, what do you mean? Harvard, you got to be smart. Dude, you can have a felony and get into Harvard. You can be a pothead. You can be smoking weed all day long and get into Harvard. You can't do that in the military. You can get no top secret clearance. Okay, you just won't. You could be a sexual predator, whatever. I mean, you can still get into Harvard. And sorry for my Harvard friends, okay? But you can look. There's that one lady, the one squatter staying in that multi-million-dollar property in California, right?
Yeah.
So that's a Harvard graduate, right? That is a Harvard graduate. Okay, you try doing that if you're in the military. Your unit will come and drag your ass out, period. They will come. Officially, MPs, and unofficially, your squad, platoon, company, battalion, they will unofficially do it or officially do it. So your integrity is light years above most people. The other great thing about your network is you will have people that have become very, very successful. You may not know it. To them, you may be just some E4 or an E5 or whatever, or a sergeant or lieutenant. One of my guys, and I'll tell this story, I'm not going to mention name, but he would tell me, hey, at the time I was a captain. Hey, Captain, I hear you're in real estate. My dad is in too. Well, long story short, he was one of the largest hotel owners in New York City. Not to most people, he was just, some dude in uniform. And, he loved the hua stuff. But that's your network. And the last thing I'll say is one of my mentors, and he said something to me, which I'm glad. He said, Nelson, never make a financial decision over an emotional reaction. And he was pissed because his chain of command, he was a CIA case officer, retired as like a 3-star. At that time, they made him get out of the reserves. They made him get out of the naval reserves. And I remember he was saying, Nelson, that irks me so much because they made me make a financial decision. So there was a group of us, enlisted officers. We were pissed at something. And he got all of us together, and I'll say his name, Walt Berbick. Walt, you're in heaven, I hope. And thank you. And him and another guy, and they got us together. And they said, don't you all ever make a financial decision over an emotional reaction. So that's part of your network. That is all part of your network.
Okay, nice. So when speaking with those comrades who are not in real estate, does your conversations ever veer off towards real estate?
There's two types of conversations, right?
Okay.
There's people that are already there or way ahead because they might have they're making their money in some other venture, right? And they're thinking like, hey, how do I reduce taxes, or I got extra capital, right? So that's one group. Then there's the other group that's like, well, I'm thinking about it, and you just have them as a podcast, listen to the podcast, whenever they want to, and then you have other people that they can always refer. Then the fourth is, they want to be public employees, civil servants, and that's cool. But I just share the benefits of it. I keep it very real, and I just kind of let them know what's going on. There's a fair amount of people who, they're like squirrels. They're very good savers, but to them it's like, oh my goodness, that's risky. And I'm like, we're going to Iraq, man. Risk is a relative term, but the airfield's getting attacked. That ain't risky, but take their money out of the G fund or something, and that's risk. I'm like, dude, the airfield is getting attacked. We are on the airfield. That's not risky. Take it at the G fund. Oh my goodness, So.
Yeah, I get it. And so, how do you give back to your military community?
Well, one is podcasts like this. I'm starting a meetup group here in Puerto Rico for military, veterans, reservists, active. So we meet on the third Thursday of every month, the Miramar restaurant. And you can reach out to me. It's part of ADPI, but we do what we need to. So that's one way. The other way is whenever I meet with veterans, I always tell them, hey, this is what's going on. Because as veterans, we have some very good benefits that some veterans just don't have the financial acumen to take advantage of. I mean, there's no reason why a veteran, if they play the long game or even the midterm game, but playing the long game, where they shouldn't retire, whether it's active duty or reserve, with a strong 6 or 7 figure portfolio. They should definitely be able to retire with a 6-figure retirement income. If you include the pension, TSP, and some property, there's no reason why they shouldn't. And they should have a very strong 6 or 7 figure portfolio.
Yeah, I agree. Looking back on it from, my time in the military, I didn't take advantage of something that you mentioned a little earlier, my network. I didn't take full advantage of it. Hey, I joined at 17. I was young, dumb, and full of grit. And and so, didn't take advantage of it then. And then I started to grow a little bit, into my mid-20s and things like that. And that's when life started to get serious and things like that. And then I jumped off active duty and then went into the reserves. And that's when, real estate became something real to me at that time. But I totally agree with you. And people need to definitely take advantage of that opportunity, especially being on active duty. You PCS, you land in this one duty station, you find your property, you buy it, you leave that duty station, keep it, put another military member in there, go somewhere else, purchase another one, and rinse and repeat all over again. There's really and truly no reason for you not to. And thank you, Nelson, for bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it applies to everybody. The other thing is we come with credibility, and again, it almost has to become like a good part-time job, but it's going to give you all kinds of full-time benefits. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Nelson, you've kind of already given us a little bit of your backstory, but before you became this successful person I see in front of me, give our listeners a little bit of your backstory, like where you grew up, how was your upbringing, what in your past shifted your mindset into becoming the person you are today.
So like I mentioned earlier, my parents are from South America, from Colombia. And so they're immigrants. And an immigrant has a very different outlook on things. So as an immigrant, there's like two types of immigrants. Immigrants that are like, I'm not going to go back, and other immigrants are, I want to go back successful. So, you have that. And I consider myself fortunate in a couple of ways. One is that I was born in the U.S. and that's lucky because you don't get to choose where you're born, right? You don't get to choose that. Your parents choose that. But growing up, my parents sent me to Colombia to go to school. But I went to a school for expat kids, for foreign kids, which is really, it was like an American school on steroids. And that would never fly today because there was only one flag, U.S. flag. We didn't celebrate no Colombian holidays. You spoke English. I mean, it was like mini United States on steroids. Like you did not speak Spanish in school. You spoke English. So to me, I was like, it was great, cool. But what that did was it gave me a taste of something that I wanted in my life in the future. Because then after a year, they brought me back to Brooklyn. And it wasn't, we didn't have none of that stuff. It was like East New York, Brooklyn. So that was a whole different story, right? And I was like, yeah, I don't want to be around you morons. So, so that helped solidify kind of who I wanted to be. I was a big fan, and I still am, of James Bond movies. Why? Because again, that was like, I want to have that dude's life. That dude is doing like stuff in the world, and some of it at the time, Roger Moore, was kind of fantasy, but it was like, man, I that's me. That's got to be me. Miami Vice was a big thing. I moved to South Florida. I was like, yeah, that sounds, Mom, sign me up for that. Fast cars and beautiful women. Yes, someone's got to do that work. It might as well be me. But those things help create like, okay, what kind of work ethic do I need to have? Who do I need to become? What kind of books I need to read? That was a very helpful thing. I love reading autobiographies about people that have, they've gone through like really, really difficult things. So that was also very helpful. So those were the kinds of things that helped mold me. And a big thing for me was being able to stay in the reserves, believe it or not, because I said, I don't want to be full time, but if something happened, I do want to be able to be a part of it. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Man, how time flies. I have just a final few questions for you,
All right.
and we can wrap this up. So, what is one belief you had as a beginning investor that turned out to be false, but may be holding people back from taking the leap into real estate investing?
What is one belief that I had as a beginning investor that was false that holds people back? That you had to be smart to do this business. That you had to be smart. You don't have to be really quote unquote book smart. You do helps to be consistent, persistent. That actually, it almost helps to be a little bit dumb. It helps to be a little bit dumb, and not dumb in like, oh, I don't know what's going on, but dumb in the fact of not naive. Again, not naive, but to say to yourself, well, if someone's got to do this, it might as well be me. Or what are the reasons why I won't be successful? Or flip it around, or what are the reasons why I will be successful? Define success for yourself, and then just go forward. And that leads to the next thing is to treat it, or I know one, that you need passion. You need passion for this stuff. You just got to treat it like a job. You really need to just treat it like a job. Like, hey, I'm in at 8, I work, I take my 30-minute lunch break, and I'm out by 5. And I got to put in a 40-hour work week. And if you treat it like a job, not like, oh, I'm passionate. Now this crap about people being passionate about real estate. Yeah, you're passionate when you make money. Then it's easy to be passionate. But let's say in your first 2 deals or opportunities, you lose money or you get your ass kicked. Where's your passion? There ain't no passion. Right? So let this passion, that's for the birds. It's really treat it like a job. And did I do the work this week that would get me fired? And if you would treat yourself like you're going to get fired, then you're probably not going to be good at this thing. And
Nice.
Good is a relative term.
Right. So true. Yeah, that I like that. And what strategies would you recommend to a beginner that has led to some of your success?
Strategies is to, a notebook, a blank sheet of paper, and write down 1 page your strengths, your weaknesses. How do you compensate for that? I would work on building up a team, and the team could be anywhere. Something as simple as I have 3 real estate agents. I know how to talk to real estate agents. I check my credit, right? So that might be something as simple as I'm working on my credit, or I'm working on my money, because that's a reflection of who you are and how handling life. So that would be something. And carve out a certain amount of time, and treat it like, this might sound kind of psychotic. I was going to say sick, but sick is like in some places like a cool term. If a person, I think, really wants to be quote unquote whatever their level of success is, to say to themselves, and this is kind of like, again, I guess that major was correct when I was a lieutenant, saying you got to get a psychological, is to say to yourself, what if somebody was holding something of incredible value to you hostage, and they said, if you don't do whatever it is that you say you're going to do by 90, 120 days, 6 months, or a year, you never see them again. You'd probably be pretty, fired up. If somebody said, look, you don't get to see your kids unless you close on a deal that gets double-digit returns, and you don't have a successful exit, you'd be really good. You'd be like analyzing deals, talking to people, raising money. You see what I mean? There's like a good motivation, and then there's like the passion flies out the window because it wouldn't matter.
Yeah, you're gonna do what you have to do in order to, make those things happen, achieve those goals. You're not gonna allow anything to stop you from attaining that goal. So, yeah, I got it. Is there any person, whether real estate related or not, that has led to your success?
I wouldn't say person. I'd say persons and circumstances.
Okay.
One is my dad. My dad is a good one. The other one is he's a coach, but I consider him to be a very good friend. Bill Ham, fantastic. Another person that creates a great environment, and hoping I don't leave anybody out, would be the guys at Jake and Gino. They create a very good environment. Environment is so much. I mentioned Walt Berwick, the late Walt Berwick. So I would say people along the way that are willing to give you a hand or sometimes push you forward. That would be, and I know I'm leaving folks out, and I apologize. A good friend of mine, I call it books. To me, books are very are instrumental. Yeah,
I totally agree. Yeah. Well, Nelson, it has been a blast having you today. And as we close out, tell our listeners where we can.
Actually, you know what? There's one guy. I've never met him. I really want to meet him. Steven Schwartzman.
Yeah.
The founder of Blackstone.
Yeah.
I love reading his books and his demeanor and the way he handles himself. So Mr. Schwartzman, if you're listening to this, one day you see this tall guy, that's going to be me. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want to meet? Who wouldn't want to have at least 15 minutes with that guy?
Yeah. And I'll throw another one. Don Peebles in there as well. So
yes.
There you go.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to have with Don Peebles. I need at least an hour with him. Steven Schwartzman, only because I know that I'd probably only be able to get 15 minutes. I'll take the 15 minutes, just lay it all down and just soak all of that in from these two gentlemen. I mean, that's fabulous. So just tell our listeners where we can learn a little bit more about you, get in touch with you, learn about all the fabulous things you have going on right now.
Yeah, you can reach me a couple of different ways. One, you can follow my podcast. It's called Investing in America. I'm on Spotify. Later on, we're launching the YouTube channel, Investing in America, ! And the episodes, sometimes they're with English and Spanish. Email me at nelson@normandygroup.us. I say again, nelson@normandygroup.us. And feel free to send me a text or WhatsApp message. Area code 954-471-7519, 954-471-7519. And Cedric, thank you.
Awesome. Well, Nelson, again, I thank you for your time today and all the wisdom you have provided to my listeners. Is greatly appreciated. And I want to thank you, our fans, for tuning in to another Service to Syndication podcast, where we want to provide you with value in your investing business. Please tune in to our next episode, where we will interview another fantastic investing professional. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Service to Syndication podcast. We want you to know that we love and appreciate your support, and we are grateful about being a part of your journey to becoming a successful real estate entrepreneur. Please share this episode with a friend who you think will get a lot out of what you just heard. Send it to someone who you know is interested in real estate and dreams of having it all and being the best they can be in all areas of life. And if this was really valuable, share it on your social media stories and timelines. Thank you for watching and listening. Now go be great.